Hello, everybody, and thank you, Luboš, for the introduction. So, as I was introduced, my name is Kamil Ekštein, and me and my co-workers, Kuba Sido, Mila Konopík, and Ondra Pražák, we were working on a project during last 2 years that has been already hinted here today, or at least mentioned. Basically, I will get to it later. It was a project aiming to provide the journalists with certain software tools. So this presentation is mostly about how it felt for us as programmers to cooperate with journalists, generally speaking, with social scientists, as far as their view of the problem is very different. So this is I will try to at least briefly get you to how it feels that you have a very, very different approach to something than your party in a research project. So it's about how we have been developing the software for journalists, with journalists, and what was it all about? Oh, I'm sorry, I did not share you my screen, so I will do it right away. So I'll try it this way. Okay, I hope.
Okay, we can see it, Kamil. That's fine.
Perfect. So what makes me a little bit nervous that I cannot see now the controls of Zoom, but it probably doesn't matter. Okay, I'll go on. So what is it? Not this way. What is it all about? It is not going to be a science. I'm not going to talk about science. So don't worry, those of you who are not familiar with mathematics, there will be almost no maths in this, no formulas, or just to depict some key concept, but I will not talk about the science behind. This is going to be just a description of an experience of situations that happened during the work on this project that was supported by Technology Agency of the Czech Republic. And the name is, I can't remember or the translation into English, but generally speaking, transforming the journalism in an era of AI or by AI. It doesn't matter that much. So I will try to provide you with some observations made by computer scientists. Just that, no less, no more. There will be no philosophical or psychological analysis because we are not trained in these fields. And you would get us, or anyone would get us there. Maybe if you feel strong in this, feel free to do your own analysis upon our observation later on during the course of my talk. And finally, there will be no absolution given at the end. So I can just ask you to be so kind and get to some absolutions on your own. All right. So the general topic that would go through the whole presentation is that during those 2 years of cooperation with top Czech journalists provided us with an experience we have never gone through before. It was something completely new for us. And I'm saying that without a glimpse of irony or without this being somehow shifted either to the positive or the negative end of the spectrum of feelings. So this is not going to be that much a scientific point of view, but a little bit a social one. So what to say as a starter? It was for us an encounter of two entirely different universes. We, as I will refer to us, or when I will say we, it means computer scientists, natural science oriented people. So what are the means and the terms we are thinking in? These are written next to this blue dragon. We always want proofs, evidences, relations that can be described by some formulas, projections, functions, algorithms. We search for determinism. If something is made this way, we want it to be made this way all the time. That's the basic fundamental principle of programming. Get rid of the particular items, just think about way to process them, no matter what it actually is, what they are. Modeling, statistics, data. And on the other hand, the social science crew of our multidisciplinary team used very different, I would say, base vectors. So mathematicians would probably understand me. I mean, the semantic space of their utterances is defined by these, as I feel it, by these terms like opinion, tradition, feelings. They are more oriented towards subjective, subjectively experiencing the world around us. What is important, media image, some kind of consensus when dealing with something. And these principles, these key elements or these foundations are very much different from those that we use in natural sciences. So we were many times during the course of works on this project, we were asking what they mean. We were not entirely able to get what is actually the problem. And it was obvious that it was a huge problem for the journalists, for instance. And they were, on the other hand, probably rather upset with us that we are not easily able to get that it is a problem, and we feel comfortable there. So they were probably asking what they want us to say or to tell them or to provide them. So this created a pretty large friction field where a lot of things, a lot of communication mistakes and misunderstandings happened. I will try to address it with describing a common problem that we already experienced when working on commercial research projects before this work with the journalists. So you may, in the yellow right part of the slide, you may imagine they're not only journalists. It applies for practically any customer that is not a professional in computer science and artificial intelligence. So this is how customers think about these things, about the application of artificial intelligence. And on the left-hand side, in that blue rectangle, there is how we see it. Yeah, like computer scientists and natural scientists, programmers. So during the first encounter, when the customer gets to the point where he or she wants an application of artificial intelligence and ask programmers, developers to prepare something for his or her company, the views are like here on the slide. So the programmers usually see the problem realistically because they have got enough experience in this. They are usually a little bit pessimistic about the outcomes. So the expectations are realistic or slightly pessimistic. So we usually tell the customers, well, it is probably solvable. We can go this way. We can prepare this for you, but don't be too eager because the result might not be perfect. We may head close to it, but it probably will never hit the point where it is perfect. The programmers are also very well aware of dangers on this way. We can see what could happen, that there are some crucial, some milestones that need to be crossed, that need to be solved here and there along the way. And we can see also why these might not be solved at the moment, be it lack of data, be it not being able to determine the principle, the driving mechanism of certain entity, etc., etc. So we can usually pretty precisely assess the complexity of the task we are facing, and we see it as somehow related to the scientific uncertainty, because it always happens in research. There are situations where you simply cannot guarantee some particular outcome. In natural science, this is normal. Everyone accepts this as a normal situation. But unfortunately, on the other hand, in social sciences, this principle of scientific uncertainty, there is, of course, but it is probably not perceived as that important as on our side of the barricade. Then when starting to work on such a project, we usually have at least a rough notion of its laboriousness. How long could that take to get something ready? At least a rough notion of feasibility, whether it is even possible to solve this problem algorithmically by some mathematical deterministic means. And we usually have at least a rough notion of computational power demands. How, plainly speaking, how powerful computers do we need to get to our goals? On the other hand, the customers are, and believe me, we've been there several times, they are either very eager and very much highly positively motivated towards AI, and they are always like, we want this. This is something that would push us miles forward our competition or whatever. Or the other group, and it's split like 50-50, these people are radically negatively motivated. They are very much persuaded that it is not a good idea to put AI in their field, in their area. Usually the customer is entirely unaware of dangers. So the customers usually cannot imagine what could be the unwanted outcome of working on such a project, such an application. And certainly because they do not work in this area, they have no task assessment skills. So they do not see what we see, the complexity of the problem, the computational demands, whether if it is feasible, and the laboriousness, how long would it take? However, because they are in their domain, they feel at home, they have a strong need to lead. And usually the programmers are understood as ants, as a kind of workers that would simply do what the leaders from the respective area of application would tell them. But unfortunately, this is not usually how it could work. when we are talking about a mid-project, when it goes somewhere for a while, what comes to the customers? Usually pretty severe disillusion and disenchantment. After a while, being faced to the problems, being faced to the work of the programmers who are usually demanding some inputs from the customer. We usually want more data. If we don't want more data, we want much more data. So the customers usually at certain moments say, we don't feel very happy about it, and we do not believe anymore in a positive outcome of this course of actions. At that moment, it comes together. They usually start to exaggerate the dangers, and usually start to be very much terrified of the scientific uncertainty. They somehow feel that this must go to hell, that this is not going to end up well. And by the way, that sudden realization of this scientific uncertainty, of the possibility that the problem might not be solved, is usually seen as a key deal breaker. While we are still pretty calm, not much happens at that moment, not yet. And usually what it comes together to, the customer becomes convinced that all these questionable issues might be solved, might be effectively dealt with a proper management performance. So if something goes wrong, we could solve it by changing the management or changing the managing strategy, which of course is usually not the way to solve it. So that's a common problem, how the AI is accepted when applied to some field, some area that is not closely connected to AI. So generally speaking, it means that most customers would either severely underestimate or overestimate the possibilities of AI applications. Both cases are, of course, unwanted and troublesome. Naturally, it is our job. We have to persuade the customer and calm him or her down, say, don't worry, it would end up well. So we need to try to explain how these things work, at least a little bit, to feel the other party comfortable in the problem. But this is usually a moment when we hit the so-called wall of experience, which can be described by what is in this yellow bubble. It's not a bubble, it's rectangular, but you know what I mean. And it would go like this. We are the professionals. This is, by the way, the notation we programmers sometimes use for variables. So this is a variable, and you may put any profession into this box, into this place. So that's how variable works. So we are the professionals, we are the journalists, and you are just programmers. So don't tell us how we should do our business. But that's the critical misunderstanding, because in fact, we can tell the customers, and we have to tell the customers how to do their business, because as a part of our training, as a part of our expertise, we are analysts. We are trained to see the possible problems, usually before they arose, by having different perspective. We are not in the respective area for, let's say, 20 years. So naturally, we do not carry with us those repeated...
Kamil, sorry, you have last minute.
I am very, very slow. Thank you for alerting me. That's not going to be easy. All right, so let's move. So I would like to show you some specific problems just to know what I'm talking about. The first specific problem that we came across was unstable wording or unstable wording to meaning projection. When we were working on a generator for Prague Stock Exchange news coverage, the software that generates news coverage for the Prague Stock Exchange, we needed to, that the software somehow assesses how the stock exchange trading went, if it was moderately growing or slightly losing, whatever. And when we tried to define these adjectives, how this growth looked like, we tried something as a starting point. And then the journalists told us, no, you cannot use this. No real journalist would write that. And we asked, okay, what should we use? Slightly or insignificantly? And they told us, no, that's not how we work. You need to use a journalist's feeling or intuition, which is exactly what we cannot do because we need to have it algorithmic. So we started with a statistical analysis and found out how these expressions are assigned to certain quantities or numbers that reflect the growth or drop of the stock exchange. And when the journalists were exposed to this statistical analysis, they denied it. They said, no, we don't use it this way. But we know for sure that they do because it was a statistical analysis. We saw the data and were able to assign the particular wording to the particular situation at the stock exchange. So that was one interesting problem. Then second one, what we observed was a very strong prejudice to community-originated sources. What we did, we needed to train a model to assess semantic similarity of expressions. And we used Wikipedia to do this. Once the journalists were made aware of this fact that we used Wikipedia, they went crazy and told us, no, you cannot do it. Wikipedia is not a reliable source of information that cannot be used. But, you know, we did not use it to assess the information. We only use it to get the shape, the geometric properties of a space, the so-called semantic space, that defines how the concepts, the semantic concepts, the utterances are related to each other. And you can, for this task, you can use any data that where the so-called distribution hypothesis holds. So these data can be entirely false as long as the relation among them are right, which is presumably true for Wikipedia. So again, we hit the wall of expertise.
So Kamil, we will have to finish your presentation. Please take the last slide and then we will have to move to another one.
All right. What could I do? So I will just say that another problem was insisting on traditionalistic schemes. And I hope it'll be possible to later on make this presentation public so you can go through it on your own. So thank you for now for your kind attention, and I will answer your questions later on, of course.